You're watching On the Record here on CNN Philippines. I'm Pia Ontiveros. Time and again, the cost of power increases while supply decreases, so it's important to check the status of our country's energy reserves. Are our power plants ready to respond to the ever-growing demand for power? How do we make sure power services remain reliable and dependable? This is a continuation of our two-part series on the state of the power industry here on the Record. Joining us, the Senate Energy Committee Chairman, Senator Win Gatchalian, Vic Dimagiba, President of Laban Consumer Group, and former Trade Undersecretary from the Energy Department, the Director for Renewable Energy Management Bureau, Maylene Capongcol, and Rogelio Babe Singson, President of Meralco's power arm, Meralco Power Gen Corporation, or MGen. Mr. Singson, also the former Public Works Secretary during the past administration. Welcome. Let's continue where we left off from last week. So I wanted to first talk about there's this increasing demand. I'm not sure about the figures. Luzon, 10,000 megawatts, Visayas, 2,000, etc. Mindanao, 1,700. Do we have enough supply? Who can start, ma'am?
Well, the country now has enough of supply, except in occurrences of force majeure or sudden breakdown. No?
Breakdown of the plants.
Yeah. So we're able to meet the demand at all times, plus the reserve requirement as imposed by the Energy Regulatory Commission.
And these sudden shutdowns of plants are because?
Are because of some defects in the operation of the power plant, like boiler tube leak or sudden auxiliary parts malfunctioning. Mm-hmm. So those are events that are not foreseen. No?
Okay. So for ordinary mortals like us who do not understand the energy and the power supply situation, etc., it's as simple as pag walang kuryente, nagagalit ang tao.
Yes.
And that's because nawalan ng kuryente dahil halimbawa kulang ang supply, or there's something wrong with transmission. Yes. Or what else?
Yes, that's why the Department of Energy wanted to have adequate supply of electricity.
You're saying we have enough supply,
yes.
In spite of the fact that sometimes there are power plants that break down.
Yes.
But this is not very comforting, right?
Exactly.
I think we should have more than...
Exactly, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that is caused by what? In one sentence, can you say why that is the situation?
Aging.
Well, yes, what Secretary Singson mentioned, aging. Aging of the power plants, increasing demand, sudden increase or decrease in the temperature. Mm-hmm. That affects the ambient performance of the power plant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Secretary Singson, aging plants.
Let me add,
last week we talked about that. Some of the plants are as old
as... we have all the information available, and we're looking at 33% of our current capacity come from plants 20 years older. And usually they are built for at least 25 years. So in other words,
they have 5 years tail end. As in mamamatay na.
Malapit na. And aside from that, you have the inefficiencies as a plant grows older. Mm-hmm. And 60%.
Like any appliance,
correct,
right?
Correct.
Like a car.
Modern jeepney program, 15 years
jeepney modernization.
Ito, 33% are 20 years and older. 60% are 15 years and older. No? So you really need better, more efficient plants. You need reserve capacities, like Department of Energy is targeting at least 25% reserve capacity. Right now, we're only at 15. So pag kami isang malaking planta that breaks down, then you start having yellow alert and
domino effect.
Yes.
Is it too simplistic to say maintenance for power plants para nga hindi mag-breakdown ng ganito? No? Well, number one, it's like car maintenance. You need to have a regular maintenance schedule, a shutdown schedule, etc. At the same time, even cars themselves, not just jeepneys, should not be on the road for too long, right?
That's right. Unexpected, yung tinatawag lang unexpected outages. No? You cannot predict. So even if you have a regular maintenance program, meron at merong...
Yeah. So sorry, I didn't catch it. The percentage of plants that are 20 years old? 33%. Wow, how comforting. 1/3 of our plants.
And
these are the ones that break down more often,
that's
right?
on the basis of a 15% reserve capacity. Ideally, we should have about 25 to 30% reserve.
Okay, so 20 years old and older, merong 15 years and older.
60% and 15 years and older.
Sus Mariose.
So talagang we really need to build new
yeah,
plants.
and then
The program of the Department of Energy to achieve the reserve capacity is to build for Luzon at least 600 megawatts new capacity annually, and then 1,000 megawatts for the whole country.
Senator Gatchalian and Mr. Dimagibag, what can you add now before we go to a break?
The common complaint of power plant proponents as well as businessmen is it takes so long just to get your permit.
Right.
On the average, just to get your permit before construction, it takes about 4 years.
4 years.
And the actual construction of a plant, assuming you factor in the weather and everything, is about 3 years. So from
Plus other problems, diba?
Yes.
Sometimes may nangyayari dun sa local
So
community.
you factor in
no?
all of those. No? So from start to end, from permit all the way to operation, it's about 7 years. So ganong katagal ang isang planta.
That's how long vehicles should be on the road.
So that's why one of the things that we are pushing with DOE is to reduce red tape. No?
Yes.
Again, we boil down to red tape. And we filed legislation to automate a lot of these processes so that we can reduce the 4-year permit time frame to about 1 year to 1.5 years. So at least you can cut the construction of plants from 1 year, from start to end to maybe about 4 to 5 years.
So what is it? What causes the red tape? Is it the human interference?
It's one of the
human
most
error, what?
complex projects that it has to go. It's a very complex project, and it has to go through various different offices.
Yeah.
DOE is actually 10% of the entire process. Meron kang DENR, meron kang local government, meron kang indigenous peoples, meron kang even PNP kasali dyan. So if you add up all of this process,
Ang daming dinadaanan.
physically you have to go there.
So in other words, the law, the rules require na dadaan talaga sa mga prosesong ito. The law and the rules just do not say how long it should take.
Yes, and you have to go to those agencies physically. It's not as if the paperwork is transferred electronically. So one by one, pupunta ka doon. And that's why it takes about 4 years. Because physically, you have to go through each of these departments.
Okay, so there's not very much common sense.
I think the laws also in the past have built up and started imposing mandatory requirements. That's why we also need to review the laws, whether the requirements are really necessary or not.
Yeah, and these requirements are like what? Are they so essential
I'll
to
give you a
making
very
sure what?
specific example. When MGen or si Secretary Singson builds a plant, kailangan siya pumunta sa CAAP just to
CAAP,
make
Civil Aviation Authority of
yes,
the Philippines.
just to make sure that the tower,
the
height complies with the CAAP. But more often than not, they know that already.
Yeah.
And more often than not, the plants are not within the airport zone. So it's near the coast, which is not the airport
We
zone.
wouldn't put the plants near them.
But it's part of the requirement. So
Okay.
regardless where your
Sino
plant
naman
is,
nag-isip ng ilagay yung
it's
requirement
over
na?
the years na. It's a compilation of many laws.
Okay.
And that's why one of the things that we filed in the Senate is this bill called EVOS, which is a one-stop shop for power plant proponents to shorten the lead time.
All right, one-stop shop. We'll do a one-stop gap for a moment. We need to take this break. You are part of this conversation. Send in your comments to our social media pages at CNN Philippines. When we return, we'll ask our guests how we can make sure electricity remains affordable. Welcome back. You're on the record. Still with us, Senate Energy Committee Chairman Senator Win Gatchalian, Vic Dimagibad, President of Laban Consumer Energy Department Director Mylene Capungcol, and Meralco Power Gen Corporation, or MGen President Rogelio Babe Singson. Wait, Mr. Dimagibad, can you add first to what we were talking about? Talk to us about, kasi Laban Consumer, di ba? So
Yes,
yung consumer dito, naiinis sa walang ka-common sense na.
Yeah, every time na may power breakdown, yung presyo sa OSM nag-spike yan eh. Kaya from the consumer side, medyo kailangan i-inquire ng DOE what was the reason why plants are conking out. It's becoming to be cycle, Pia.
Yeah, we're so used to this already,
pag
no?
summer, papasok ang summer, yung mga planta, dun siya nagbe-breakdown. No? Meron silang rights and powers under the DOE to see to it na walang anti-competitive practices when they plant conk out. No? At kailangan,
What do you mean by anti-competitive
kasi
practices?
maaaring
Like?
nagkakasundo. Ano?
Nagkakasundo
Dahil na masira. And then they spike the prices at WESF, tataas.
Collusion yun?
In fact, for March, ang power rate natin sa Meralco is actually 97 centavos, ang higher, no? 85 lang ang sisingilin, no? Meron pang 12 na ililipat sa April. So I think the DOE should be strictly monitoring
Kung
yung
totoo,
the reasons,
kung totoo ang
nag-breakdown,
dahilan ng
so force
breakdown.
majeure, o yung sinasabi ni Sec Singson na 20 years old na siya at 5 taon na lang kasi parang hindi ko naniniwala doon. Like a ship, every time you do a regular maintenance of a ship, you call it dry dock, no? Nadadagdagan mo yung age niya yung haba ng buhay niya. No, ganun din sa mga planta ng power. So, strict monitoring, see to it na ang consumer gets a fair share of what should really be the cost of power. Otherwise, parang bakit pag March, April, look at the history. Diyan nangyari yung mga maraming shutdown eh. Pero
So,
pagdating
bakit
naman ng taglamig, ewan ko, yung bang planta hindi nasisira pag taglamig. Pero dapat masira.
So bakit March, April? Because
Yun ang summer eh.
so it's easier to
I don't know why, that's why.
summer mainit
Yung
you'll open your air
about 2 weeks
conditioning,
ago,
etc.
ilang beses nag-yellow alert ang
Okay.
DOE. Yeah.
Ma'am, can you tell us, totoo ba yun?
Well, we have investigated yung occurrences of force outage during summer months, ano? And some of the experts saying that the ambient heat during summer affects the performance of some of the power plants.
In other words, totoo na nagbe-breakdown siya? Hindi ito
Nagbe-breakdown.
yung nag-uusap-usap?
That is on the other
Nagkakasundo?
side of the story. What we did is the Secretary has written the Philippine Competition Commission, the Energy Regulatory Commission to investigate those power plants that went on force outage. And as earlier mentioned, we now have this what we call performance audit and assessment of all the power plants operating in the country to check on what their practices,
Yeah.
how do they do their own maintenance of the assets,
Oo.
how they procure the fuel,
Oo.
the
So what are your,
spare parts,
what are your
inventory.
findings?
We
Are
just
these
started-
honest to goodness innocent breakdowns or nag-uusap-usap ba, as Mr. Dimagi ba said, para nga mag-spike yung presyo?
Well, from what we have investigated in 2016, there's indeed some sort of a breakdown in the parts of the power plant.
So totoo.
Yes, but
Lahat.
again, we're not...
So saan nanggagaling yung... Sir, parang napaka-suspicioso na kasi. Saan nanggagaling yung sinasabi
Kasi-
niya, ma'am?
Kasi
What I mean,
you have to be suspicious dahil
Yes.
bakit kapag papasok na yung those are the months na hindi na mainit, Pia. Those are the months when the demand for power or electricity is higher. Kasi mainit, di ba? People use the aircon longer than usual. So, nata-timing siya doon eh. In terms of maintenance kasi, you should be maintaining your plant not on summertime. You maintain your plants at the weather, yung sinasabi niya,
When it's cool.
yung ambience.
When it's
Well, we're not setting aside, Ma'am, yung anti-competitive behavior or abuse of market power. That's why we are coordinating with the Energy Regulatory Commission and the Philippine Competition Commission because these two agencies are in charge of looking into the...
and yeah. So how long
those
has the ERC
practices.
and the PCC been looking into this, and where are the results of
From
the
what
investigation?
I understand, they're continuing to do some investigation and meetings.
Yeah, just to
Senator.
add to that, no, with the advent of Philippine Competition Commission, this type of collusion will now be detected, and now we have a specialized team, no, that can detect, analyze, and penalize all of this collusion among generators. In the past kasi before PCC talagang may mga reports of biglaan lang sabay-sabay 3, 4 na planta nag-shutdown or nasisiraan, and then nag-spike yung wholesale pricing. Pag nag-spike yung wholesale pricing, automatically transferred yan to the consumers. But now I think the industry, no, because we have a full deregulated industry, no, all of the generation except for some are owned by the private sector, and we have to make sure, no, through PCC that hindi ito nag-uusap-usap at nagkokontsabahan.
Okay, so we have to make sure, but as far as you know, hindi naman sila nag-uusap.
I think after when PCC started operating already, which is around 2016, no, we have industry experts within PCC that monitors all of this. And then mechanism na sila. Aside from DOE, aside from ERC, you have PCC whose sole job is to monitor anti-competitive behavior. So in 2016, tingin ko wala ng mga ganitong mga tendencies. Prior to that, we have that investigation in ERC wherein nag-spike ng almost 17 pesos yung presyo.
Okay.
No?
Secretary Babe Singson, you're with MGen. Tell us about this. You're about to begin constructing
we have
a power
one
plant.
ongoing construction, which is 455 megawatts. No?
When did you start constructing, sir?
Last year.
Last year. How long did it take you to... Kanina, in-explain na nga ni
Ito
Senator
nga,
Sherwin.
expansion lang of an existing katabing planta. No? But, for example, for Redondo Peninsula, it's been there since more than 10 years. So we're just preparing the site. No? But I think going back to what everybody's been talking about, no? Ang importante kasi yung 50% of what a consumer like me receives comes from generation. So napakalaga nung how the generation price behaves.
Okay.
So
The generation meaning we're talking about the different kinds of
whether it is coal, whether it is hydro, basta
solar, wind, etc.
ang bugbog lang yung Meralco dahil kami yung umaharap sa consumer.
Oo, hindi naman nakalagay dun sa bill kasi na...
No, may breakdown yun.
Hindi, may breakdown, but what I mean
Correct.
is, when the bill comes, it's a Meralco bill. Dapat siguro ilagay nyo doon yun. Yeah.
Kung hindi lang nagkaroon ng additional, what we refer to as, alam ni Senator Win ito, yung policy charges, no? Meaning, nagkaroon ka ng train, nagkaroon ka ng coal tax, nagkaroon ka ng increased VAT, nagkaroon ka ng FIT subsidies. So those are the ones that drive.
Na magpapataas naman ngayon.
That's correct.
Okay. Although, people naman have said na napansin nila in the last few years, bumababa naman yung presyo. However, our electricity is still the most expensive in this region, in the world, what? Or one of the most expensive?
Well, it's expensive
and what is the reason?
relative. And I think DTI knows this very well. That's why...
DTI or former DTI. Pero ganun pa rin yun. DTI.
Kaya yung industries went to other countries. And now, my concern is, we're now trying to again impose certain restrictions, no, ahead of our other countries around us. So again, how can we attract
So industries, foreign investors, manufacturing, etc. Dahil nga mataas ang electrical
Nauuna tayo
cost.
sa curve, parati, no?
Okay.
Like I'm concerned about climate change, fine. But if you look in this in terms of the overall scheme of things, we're one of the lowest per capita polluters, call it. No?
Okay.
And yet, we're imposing certain new restrictions, no, compared to our other neighbors. So tataas ulit tayo. Then people will again, instead of going to the Philippines for industrialization, they'll go elsewhere.
They'll go elsewhere.
I think we have to put this in context also when it comes to pricing, because our population is almost 70% below poverty level. And if we look at the average price or the average take-up of an electricity bill, it's about 5%. So 5% of a family's income goes to their electricity bill. The rest sa pagkain, sa eskwelahan. So people are very sensitive with the fluctuations in the electricity prices. That's why it's very important to monitor and to make sure that the market's very efficient because deregulated tayo eh. One concept dito, laban-laban lahat para bumaba yung presyo. Yung trabaho ng gobyerno is to make sure that naglalaban-laban nga lahat.
Right. All right. We'll take a short break. This is On the Record. We'll be right back. You're still on the record, still our guests with us, Vic Dimagiba, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Babe Singson of MGen Meralco, and Ms. Kapungkol of the Department of Energy. We're talking about the price of electricity. Apektado rin ito ng the kind of power, right? The kind of, like for example, kind of power plant. No? If we have diesel, coal, etc. Kung RE yan, renewable energy.
Yes.
Yeah, in the
What would make it cheaper?
Yeah, in the long run, because as mentioned, no, you still need a good, reliable base load. No? And right now, the most reliable and the most cost competitive is coal. And then, personally, if we only had 24-hour sun, we only had 24-hour wind, I'll go for renewables. Unfortunately, that's not the case. No? So, for example, for the distribution utility Meralco, we worry about for our more than 6 million consumers. We need to be there when they need us. No? Hindi pwedeng, sorry, walang araw eh. Hindi pwedeng ganon eh.
Yeah. Sorry, walang wind.
Walang wind. No?
Okay.
So,
Pero merong coal.
merong coal. So
Okay.
we need to be able to provide a reliable, cost-effective base load.
Okay. But of course, there are so many questions about coal-fired power plants also.
And
Right.
that's our next point. Now, we want to go to what we refer to as high-efficiency, low-emission coal plants. And these are,
There is such a thing.
there are new technologies that are, coal plants are now being built in the center of town, of cities, no? Because they're clean. You just see the steam coming out.
And that is what MGen is going
That's
to be
correct.
getting into.
That's correct.
How many
We're looking
plants
at
such as these you build?
the first supercritical that's ongoing in Mauban. We're looking at, hopefully ERC will approve soon 1,200 ultra supercritical. So this should put us in a position that yes, we have high efficiency, low emission coal plants in the country.
Mr. Dimagiba, what does Laban Consumer want to see?
Well, at the moment, Pia, sa Energy Regulatory Commission, we have opposed the continuing grant of the feed-in tariff for renewable energy. In fact, at the moment, per kilowatt, we are spending 18 centavos. No? And the renewable energy sector wanted that to increase to 29 centavos. So that's easily additional 10 centavos. So we have opposed the 2017 application, the 2018 application, and this is legal, no? But we have also filed a petition to void the 2016 feed-in tariff grant on issues of legality and due process, things like that. And of course, we have a new Secretary of Energy who would not register new RE projects, so to speak. In other words, nandun na siya sa threshold approved before his term. So hanggang doon na lang yung mga bagong project ng renewable energy. And in principle, he also doesn't like this regime of feed-in tariff allowance. Kasi may subsidy na yung planta eh. May incentive na yan nung itineo eh. And tapos may assured taripa na yan, no? And then bibigyan pa siya ng additional allowance coming from our pocket. So, but that's the law. We cannot do anything about it. So what we are doing as Laban Consumer is to ensure that the processes are complied with, that the data are correct, and that they deserve the amount that they're asking for.
Lalo na.
Meron
kuryente.
kaming project ni Attorney Dimagiba. And this is patterned after the US jurisdiction. Ngayon kasi, for example, may utilities na magfa-file ng increase in rate, sila yung lumalaban. Sila yung gumagastos. Buti si attorney is a lawyer. Siya yung file, nagda-draft ng petition.
Yeah.
Siya gumagawa lahat. In ibang consumer na hindi lawyer, will hire lawyers to do the fighting. In other jurisdiction, it's the government that protects the consumer. So it's a government that represents the consumer. Kasi nga, ang consumer fragmented eh. And buti nilang si attorney, after retirement, he took up the cudgels of the consumer group. Kaya nalalabanan niya. But hindi lahat ng consumer ganun eh. And that's why one of the projects that we are going to propose in the Senate, in Congress, is to create an Office of the Consumer Advocate within the DOJ. Para itong DOJ, no, poprotektahan din ating mga consumers.
All right. For your final words, can you please just answer this question? What should government do? What should we all do to ensure power that is sustainable, affordable, reasonably priced?
Yeah, there's such a thing as the energy trilemma in the power sector, Pia, to deliver trilemma. It's a balancing act, no, to deliver reliable power, to deliver cheap power, and to deliver clean power. Unfortunately, all of this, you have to do a balancing act to achieve all of this because clean power is expensive now. Reliable power is cheap now. So all of this should be a great balancing act. And that's the job of the policymakers and the regulators and the legislators, to make sure that the balancing act is towards, in favor of the consumers.
A response to
For the
that question,
Department of Energy, we need to put in place an environment conducive to private sector participation in generation and the supply. Of course, there should be a robust and strong transmission and distribution system because, as we said, the reliability of a grid is dictated by the weakest link. So if you don't have enough supply, the cost will increase. If your transmission line or distribution lines are weak, then the power cannot go to the household end. No? So that impacts on the price. So what the Department of Energy is doing is try to facilitate a conducive environment for the private sector to come in.
Right. Secretary Singson of Meralco MGen, you have
Yeah.
the last
Well,
word.
obviously, we need additional capacity. And we have pending applications to be able to build new plants. But
How many applications?
let's just put one or two that
Okay.
we really need out very soon, because they are what we call shovel ready.
Shovel ready.
And we're looking at about a total of $3 billion in investment. And we hope we get this out soon. We're very proud of the technology. It's more expensive, but because of the high efficiency, low emission, we're going for it.
All right. Thank you very much to our guests today, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Sir, Mr.
Thank you.
Magiba, Ma'am, Ms. Kapungkol of the Department of Energy, and Secretary Babe Singson
Thank you.
of Meralco MGen. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. And thank you for joining us. I'm Pio Ontiveros. I'll see you again here on the Record.